Mystery of the Midnight Train. Mystery of the Midnight Train. Chapter 1. The Late Night Journey. Heavy rain fell over London Station late one autumn night. People hurried across the platform carrying umbrellas and suitcases. Bright station lights reflected on the wet ground. A long black train waited quietly beside the platform. The Midnight Express to Edinburgh. Emma Carter pulled her coat tightly around her as cold wind moved through the station. She looked tired after a long day at work. "All aboard!" shouted the conductor. Emma quickly climbed onto the train. Inside, the carriage felt warm and quiet. Soft yellow lights glowed above the seats. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Emma found her compartment and placed her suitcase near the door. Across from her sat an older man reading a newspaper. Beside the window sat a young woman listening to music. Everyone looked sleepy. The train whistle blew loudly. Slowly, the Midnight Express left London and disappeared into the rainy darkness. Emma leaned back in her seat and sighed. Finally, she could relax. But she did not know the night would soon become very strange. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Passenger. About 1 hour later, Emma walked into the corridor to buy tea. The train moved smoothly through the dark countryside. Most passengers remained quiet. Some were reading. Others were sleeping. As Emma walked past the next carriage, she noticed a man standing alone near the window. He wore a dark gray coat and black gloves. A small leather bag rested beside his feet. The man looked nervous. He kept checking his watch and looking behind him. Emma found it strange. A few moments later, the train lights flickered briefly. The corridor became dark for only 1 second. Then the lights returned. When Emma looked again, the man was gone. Only the leather bag remained beside the window. Emma frowned slightly. "That's odd," she whispered. She looked around carefully. The corridor was empty. A conductor walked past carrying tickets. "Excuse me," Emma said quietly. "Did you see the man standing here a moment ago?" The conductor looked confused. "What man?" "The man in the gray coat." The conductor shook his head slowly. "I didn't see anyone." Emma glanced back toward the empty corridor. A strange feeling settled in her stomach. Chapter 3. The Forgotten Bag. Emma returned to her seat, but she could not stop thinking about the missing passenger. The old man across from her noticed her worried expression. "Is something wrong?" he asked kindly. "I'm not sure," Emma admitted. She explained what she had seen. The old man listened carefully. "Perhaps he moved to another carriage," he suggested. "Maybe," Emma replied. But something still felt strange. A few minutes later, curiosity finally became too strong. Emma stood up again. "I'll be back," she said politely. She walked carefully through the swaying train corridors. The leather bag still sat beside the window exactly where the man had left it. Emma looked around once more. Still no sign of the passenger. Finally, she carefully picked up the bag. It felt surprisingly heavy. A small silver tag hung from the handle. "Daniel Harper." Emma suddenly heard footsteps behind her. A tall woman wearing a blue uniform approached. She was another train conductor. "Miss, is that your bag?" the conductor asked. "No," Emma replied quickly. "I think someone left it here." The conductor looked concerned. "Did you see who it belonged to?" "Yes," Emma answered. "A man in a gray coat." The conductor frowned. "That's strange." "Why?" The conductor lowered her voice. A passenger named Daniel Harper was supposed to board this train tonight. Emma waited nervously. But, according to the station records, the conductor continued quietly. He never arrived. Chapter 4. Whispered Conversations. Rain continued crashing against the train windows as the Midnight Express raced north through the darkness. Emma sat inside the dining carriage with the conductor, whose name was Mrs. Doyle. The leather bag rested on the table between them. Mrs. Doyle looked serious. "We should open it," she said quietly. Emma nodded nervously. Mrs. Doyle carefully unlocked the bag. Inside they found several items: a notebook, a silver pocket watch, a train ticket, and an envelope marked Private. Emma stared at the objects. "This feels like a mystery movie," she whispered. Mrs. Doyle opened the notebook carefully. Most pages contained short notes and strange numbers, but one sentence caught Emma's attention immediately. "Do not trust the man in carriage 7. Emma looked up quickly. "What does that mean?" Mrs. Doyle looked worried. "I don't know." Suddenly, the dining carriage lights flickered again. Several passengers looked around nervously. The train seemed darker now, more silent, almost eerie. Emma swallowed nervously. "Maybe we should tell the police." "We will when we arrive in Edinburgh," Mrs. Doyle replied. Then she leaned closer. "But until then, we should stay careful." Emma glanced toward the dark corridor outside. Somewhere on the train, someone was hiding secrets. Chapter 5. Carriage 7. Later that night, Emma could not sleep. The words from the notebook stayed in her mind. "Do not trust the man in carriage 7. Finally, curiosity won. She quietly left her compartment. The train corridors were dim and nearly empty. Soft lights glowed overhead. The train wheels rattled rhythmically below. Clack, 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 clack. Emma slowly walked toward carriage 7. Her heart beat faster with every step. When she finally arrived, she carefully looked inside. Several passengers slept quietly. One man sat awake near the back. He wore a dark green coat and a black hat. A newspaper covered most of his face. Emma studied him carefully. Then, suddenly, the man lowered the newspaper and looked directly at her. Emma froze. The man's eyes looked cold and sharp. "Can I help you?" he asked slowly. Emma forced a nervous smile. "Sorry, wrong carriage." She quickly turned away and hurried back down the corridor. Behind her, she heard the compartment door slide open. Footsteps followed softly. Emma walked faster. The footsteps became quicker, too. Fear rushed through her body. She turned the corner sharply and nearly collided with Mrs. Doyle. "Emma!" the conductor whispered. "What happened?" "There's a man following me!" Mrs. Doyle immediately looked behind them. But the corridor was now completely empty. No footsteps, no passengers. Only silence. Chapter 6. The Secret Message. Back inside the dining carriage, Emma and Mrs. Doyle examined the notebook again. "There must be another clue," Emma said. Mrs. Doyle carefully turned more pages. Suddenly, she stopped. "There's writing hidden here." Under the light, faint words appeared between the notebook lines. Emma read them slowly. "If anything happens to me, the pocket watch contains the truth." Both women stared at the silver watch lying on the table. Mrs. Doyle carefully opened it. Inside was a tiny folded piece of paper. Emma unfolded it carefully. Written inside was a message. "Meet me at Edinburgh Station, midnight, Platform 4. Emma looked confused. Who wrote this? Before Mrs. Doyle could answer, the train suddenly slowed down. The brakes screeched loudly. Passengers woke in confusion. Outside, only darkness and rain surrounded the train. What's happening? Emma asked nervously. The train stopped completely. Then all the lights went out. Everything became black. Chapter 7. Darkness on the train. For several seconds, the train remained completely silent. Passengers whispered nervously in the darkness. Someone shouted from another carriage. A child began crying softly. Emma held tightly onto the table. Then emergency lights slowly turned on. Red lights filled the corridor with an eerie glow. Mrs. Doyle grabbed a flashlight. "Stay here," she instructed, but Emma shook her head. "No, I'm coming with you." The two women carefully moved through the dark train. Rain hammered against the windows. Suddenly, they heard voices ahead. Two men argued quietly near carriage 7. Emma recognized one voice immediately. It belonged to the man with the black hat. "We need the bag," the man whispered angrily. Another voice answered nervously. "He already hid the documents." Emma gasped softly. Mrs. Doyle quickly pulled her behind the wall. The men continued arguing. Then one of them noticed movement nearby. "Who's there?" Footsteps rushed toward them. Emma and Mrs. Doyle ran down the corridor. Passengers looked confused as they hurried past. Finally, they reached the conductor's office and locked the door. Emma breathed heavily. "This is getting dangerous." Mrs. Doyle nodded grimly. "I think Daniel Harper discovered something important." "But where is he now?" Emma asked quietly. Neither woman knew the answer. Chapter 8. The Missing Passenger. About 30 minutes later, the train lights finally returned. The Midnight Express slowly continued north toward Edinburgh. Mrs. Doyle contacted railway police using the train radio. Officers would meet them at the station. Emma felt relieved, but the mystery still remained unsolved. Then suddenly, someone knocked softly on the office door. Knock. Knock. Emma and Mrs. Doyle looked at each other nervously. "Who is it?" Mrs. Doyle asked firmly. A tired voice answered quietly. "My name is Daniel Harper." Emma's eyes widened. Mrs. Doyle slowly opened the door. A pale man wearing a gray coat stood outside. The missing passenger. "You're alive!" Emma exclaimed. Daniel looked exhausted. "I had to hide," he explained quickly. "The men in carriage 7 were following me." Mrs. Doyle crossed her arms. "Why?" Daniel looked nervous. "I'm a journalist," he explained. "I discovered illegal activities involving stolen government documents." Emma stared in shock. "The papers are hidden inside the watch," Daniel continued. "The men wanted to steal them before I reached Edinburgh." Suddenly, loud footsteps echoed through the corridor again. "The police will protect you at Edinburgh Station," Mrs. Doyle said quickly. Daniel nodded. "We're almost there." Chapter 9. Final Stop. Near midnight, the lights of Edinburgh finally appeared outside the train windows. Rain still fell softly across the dark station platform. Police officers waited beside Platform 4. As soon as the train stopped, officers entered quickly. The men from Carriage 7 tried to escape, but police arrested them before they could leave the station. Passengers watched in shock. Emma stood beside Daniel and Mrs. Doyle near the train doors. "You helped save important evidence tonight," Daniel told Emma gratefully. Emma laughed nervously. "I only wanted a cup of tea." Mrs. Doyle smiled warmly. Sometimes ordinary nights become extraordinary. Daniel carefully held the silver pocket watch. This watch protected the truth. Emma looked toward the rainy station outside. The long, mysterious journey was finally ending. But she knew she would never forget the Midnight Express. Chapter 10. Morning Light. The next morning, sunlight finally appeared over Edinburgh. The storm had ended. Emma sat inside a quiet cafe near the station, drinking hot tea. For the first time in hours, she felt calm. Mrs. Doyle entered the cafe carrying newspapers. "You're famous," she joked. The front page headline read, "Mystery Solved on Midnight Train." Emma laughed softly. "I still can't believe everything happened." Mrs. Doyle smiled. "You were brave." Daniel soon arrived, too. He thanked Emma again for her help. "Without you, those documents might have disappeared forever," he said. Emma looked out the cafe window at the bright morning streets. Only yesterday she had expected an ordinary train ride home. Instead, she discovered mystery, danger, and courage hidden inside a rainy midnight journey. As the city slowly woke beneath the pale Scottish sunlight, Emma smiled quietly to herself. Sometimes life changed without warning. Sometimes mysteries waited in silent corridors beneath flickering train lights. And sometimes the most unforgettable stories began with nothing more than a missing passenger on a midnight train. Vocabulary words: corridor, a long narrow hallway; compartment, a private section on a train; conductor, a person who works on a train; passenger, a person traveling in a vehicle. Mysterious, strange or difficult to explain. Evidence, information used to prove something. Journalist, a person who reports news. Platform, the area beside a train. Whisper, to speak very quietly. Flicker, when a light turns on and off quickly.